House is focused on the China threat. Yesterday, with two hearings, the new China Select Committee held a primetime hearing, while the Foreign Affairs Committee tackled CCP aggression earlier in the day. Congressman Darrell Issa addressed President Biden's last meeting with Xi Jinping. Watch this.
He did not talk about the export relationship. He did not talk about the stealing of intellectual property. To China, this is what the president thinks, not your partner there's recognition of a constant and pervasive attempt and success in stealing from America.
Congressman, I would say that the most recent meeting between President Xi and President Biden in Bali was wide-ranging and exceptionally candid.
Joining me right now, the man himself, California Congressman Darrell Issa, is here. He's a member of the Judiciary and Foreign Affairs Committees. Congressman, thanks very much for being here today, and thank you for your commentary yesterday on the CCP. You laid out the threat. What do you think you accomplished yesterday, and what are your takeaways from that hearing?
Well, we certainly pointed out the difference between what the administration tells Capitol Hill about getting tough on China and what President Biden doesn't say or talks about when he's with President Xi. The problem really is that these mixed messages allow China to continue thinking they can do what they're doing, which might lead to an invasion of Taiwan. So we want to get a straight message about Taiwan, but we also want to get a message about $500 billion a year of structural theft from the United States economy by Chinese spies. We made it very clear, even though they would offer some defense, that, for example, students are organized. Chinese students are organized to be spies, often not deliberately, but because their families are back home, because they have very little choice when they go back but to answer questions. And case after case after case, we've had massive theft. I had multiple hearings yesterday related to China. The one thing we saw was we're losing the battle. We're losing the battle with China. We're losing it on fentanyl at the border. We're losing it on intellectual property. And apparently we're losing it in the balloon race.
Well, it's just incredible how strategic the CCP has been to be able to infiltrate American universities the way that they have, to actually get, leading professors to send back information to the CCP. I wrote about this in The Cost, the book I came out with in 2020 with James Freeman. And in the book, I detail a worker at Motorola who was stopped at the airport, and she had a ton of thumb drives in her pockets, basically stealing patents from Motorola to bring it back to the CCP. How is this missed for so long? I mean, this is costing American business, what, $600 to $800 billion a year?
Well, Maria, it hasn't been missed. You've been talking about it. Others have been talking about it. What's happening even now is that other news networks and so on are being revisionist and implying that that they've always been open to talking about China's misconduct. One of your major competitors today is all over how they've always been for open science and consideration that the Wuhan virus might have come from the lab. But of course, they're saying it now. That doesn't make it true. When you were saying those things, you were almost a lone voice, both directly and with people you had on the air. So one of our challenges is don't let people revise history, but also, let's be honest, just as this country is hooked on fentanyl and it killed 108,000 Americans last year, we're also hooked on Chinese products and Chinese investment. And that's one of the things we have to get weaned off of as soon as possible, because as long as we're hooked on it, you're going to see college professors talking great about China and ignoring the theft. You're going to see political leaders, including our president, making the assumption that we have to work with China no matter what China does wrong. Well, just as we can no longer work with Russia, we have to say we can no longer work with China under the current terms of their constant and organized theft and invasion of our privacy and an attempt to actually overthrow our government.
Yeah, I mean, look, is this intentional that they're poisoning American citizens? The House Judiciary Subcommittee is holding a hearing on the fentanyl crisis today. I want to know what you expect there, but I also want to get your take on what you're willing to do about all of this, because right now you're talking about, what, a $400 deficit on trade with China. We buy so much more from China than they buy from us. Would you be supportive of revoking China's most favored nation status when it comes to trade, Or does that throw a wrecking ball into the economy here because it clearly will send lots of products much higher in price?
What I'm for is what President Trump tried to do and began doing, and what the CHIPS Act and other bills are trying to accomplish, which is weaning us as quickly as possible off of a dependence on products that, for the most part, we didn't need to buy from China. China has cheap labor. I've got to tell you, there's no way in the world you need to have chips made in China because they're not labor intensive, they're capital intensive. The same is true of everything from metal products and the like. China has to buy all the raw materials, including the energy, to then create and send us back steel, rubber, automobiles and the like. The fact is they're at a competitive disadvantage. We need to get our capital going again. We need to get back in the manufacturing business. And if we're not going to do it in the United States, we have to do it with trusted partners. And I know that Mexico can be a pain to work with, but the fact is Mexico is a comparative trusted partner, and we need to make it a success again.
Well, you're going to need a partner in the White House. At the same time of all of this talk and moves from your committees, you got Joe Biden canceling the China initiative, right? Under Trump, we saw a whole string of indictments of people that were stealing and surveilling, and then Joe Biden comes in and reverses the executive orders, kills the China initiative. Real quick.
If President Biden wants to get his appropriations, our institutions, including Homeland Security, including the FBI, they're going to have to take serious efforts at China. Otherwise, he won't get his money.
Okay, so you're going to use the appropriations process. All right, we will be watching that.
Absolutely.
Congressman, it's good to see you.